I've been involved with Trich probably as a practicing veterinarian longer than I've wanted to. Certainly in Nebraska, we've talked a little bit about the issues we've had. I am from Alma, Nebraska. Here is where our practice is situated, so just about 3.5 hours away from right here in Omaha. My involvement with Trich, I guess, not only in clinical practice, but also started with Nebraska Cattlemen and NCBA. I've been the chair of the Animal Health Committee with Nebraska Cattlemen for about 4 years now. And back in 2008, when we kind of started having more Trich cases in Nebraska, it came to the cattlemen's attention. And so as the chairman, I certainly had to be involved with that. And then was also involved with the Nebraska Vet Med Association, working together with the two groups. And ultimately, we did get some legislation that allowed for notification of neighbors that wasn't previously happening. So that's kind of where my involvement started with trichomoniasis, and has kind of gone on from there. So I was charged with the task of sample collection, and we had a nice video by Dr. Heckendorf. We're going to beat this to death a little bit, so everybody's going to know how to sample a bull by the time they walk out of here today. So, are there other practicing veterinarians here in the audience? Any current? Great. So we can jump in and if I'm wrong, you can jump in and tell everybody what's going on. But
once we have the animal in the squeeze chute, might want to consider restraint, particularly for those animals that are a little intractable, for both the protection of the individual as well as the collector. Next, we'll put on a pair of disposable latex gloves. The reason we put on gloves for every bull we test is to reduce the possibility of cross-contamination between bulls, particularly when PCR testing is involved. Now we're going to get our scissors and a paper towel in order that we can trim the sheath hair from the sheath. And we'll dry the sheath if there's any excess moisture accumulation with a paper towel after we complete the process, and then wipe any excess hair from the scissors from any excess hair or moisture before you place them back in a disinfectant. For those bulls with a dirt or debris in the prepuce, a minimum amount of saline is to be used to lavage the sheath. Now we'll prepare for sample collection from the bull using a new 12 cc syringe to produce a vacuum on our guarded pipette that will reduce any contamination as we go into the sheath. And now we're prepared to collect our sample, introducing our pipette into the sheath. Remembering as we get close to our area of the fornix of the penis, we won't extend our pipette through our guard sheath. Being aggressive in our sample collection, applying a steady vacuum on the end of our pipette. We'll collect our sample, being aggressive, but not trying to get so aggressive we get blood contamination, and then we reduce our vacuum as we withdraw our pipette from the sheath. As you can see, we have an excellent sample. As we prepare to inoculate our sample, we want to make sure that the bull's identification is properly recorded on the in-pouch culture media. We'll introduce the pipette into the upper compartment of the in-pouch, aspirating a couple or 3 times to completely inoculate the smegma sample into the pouch. as manufacturer directs. Then we'll make 3 to 4 turns of the top of the pouch to express the fluid into the lower compartment. We'll seal the pouch by turning the little yellow tabs on in and placing in our container in an upright position. We want to make sure and protect these samples from direct sunlight and keep them at a temperature between 68 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Overaggressive sampling can lead to bleeding, and that's unacceptable. And now that we've completed our testing, we'll transport our samples back to the clinic for shipment.
I think we all kind of have an understanding of the process. One thing I do want to talk about is from a little bit different approach in sampling that we have as practitioners, is some of the challenges that we get with different diagnostic labs, because different diagnostic labs want their samples in different ways, and so we need to know that before we do the sampling. One thing I'll present is last year in October, right before we talked to the group in San Diego, I had one of my techs call 10 different labs to ask them what they wanted for trick samples for PCR. And how many different answers do you think we got? 10. Not one of them agreed completely on exactly how they wanted the samples and how they wanted them shipped. This is a little bit too small to read probably, but here's a little bit of the summary of that. Basically, we asked them 4 questions on whether they wanted them incubated, how did they want them shipped, could they do pooling, and their preferred collection media. So certainly we have challenges, and as you talk to veterinarians and practicing veterinarians, make sure that they know when they call ahead to the lab so that they're getting them the proper sample. The lab that we have currently been working with recently changed in that they will only accept the in-transit tubes for PCR, and they will not do them out of in-pouches now. At least they feel that in their validation methods that was the best way to go. So the challenges start at that point before we even get to the sampling process. Number one thing I think the challenge is restraint safety. For me, for my practice, there's 6 veterinarians in my practice. We don't want anybody getting hurt. We don't want the bulls getting hurt. I see a lot of manual chutes out there, and we're not going to do collections in manual chutes. We're just not going to do it. For the safety of our people, for the safety of those bulls, either they're going to need to have a hydraulic chute or they're going to bring them to the office. Now, most, in our situation, 90% of the bulls come to the office, so it's not a huge deal, but and the people that we go out to probably have better facilities than we do, that we do collections out in the field. Sure. So, yeah, the question here is this safe? I'm not sure what he's doing there, but there's no chute, and I certainly wouldn't want to be doing that. So again, for me, the number one issue is everybody's safety involved in the collection process, so we would rather again have something like this, a chute that can restrain the bull. This picture is actually in Russia, so amazingly, the Russians don't have a lot of cattle, but they do have nice facilities. It gets pretty cold there, so they do have to have nice facilities. The 2 gentlemen over there on the left are both veterinarians, and interestingly, and these were heifers going through, but they're rabies vaccinating. So, just a little side note there. So, as we get into the collection process, the sampling process, what collection method are you going to use? I think readily agreeable preputial scraping with a pipette has been what we've done in the past, and what what I see is recommended by most of the universities, extension offices, those type of things now. Also preputial scraping using the Trichomoniasis device. Dr. Williams here. Thought I seen him here earlier. So that's certainly available. There is still labs, at least 2 labs that were surveyed that accepted saline samples. And then, and that's supposed to say swab, not swab, but Jeff and I talked about it, swabbing or scraping to the penis. We do this once in a while when we get a bloody sample. So if we get in there and you can be sometimes as gentle as you can be, and you'll still get too much blood. And from what they tell us now at the diagnostic labs, absolutely no blood. It's going to inhibit our PCR. It's going to inhibit cultures. So we do not want blood. So we will extend those bowls and take a scraping and try to do our best that way if we do get blood. Cleanliness in field conditions, another challenge that we face. In Nebraska, I think it's we mostly face dust because we haven't had this stuff that we've had the last couple of days for a while. But certainly, as bulls come in, depending on your spraying, if it's dry or wet, fecal matter, those sort of things, trying to be as clean as possible is important. It's nice when you can have them through your clinics to do that. As we know, people's facilities aren't always as clean as we'd like them to be. One of the issues that we see, one of the issues that I found with scissors and clipping, because we need to be clean, we need to clip the hair before we do that. I know one of the labs strongly advised us against using something like chlorhexidine to rinse your scissors, as it is an inhibitor in the PCR process in their mind. So if you got some of that in your pipette, that would skew your results. So there's challenges there. Sometimes you get in situations, you get a bunch of bulls that were housed in a lot and it's muddy. And they come in, you got a whole bunch to trick test. And you're out in the field trying to do those. You do need saline to clean those out. The dirty samples, I think, rarely return positive results. Maybe because we don't get a lot of positive results. But Dr. Houston, I know, presented some work at an extension symposia last year that they had done with samples that were injected with bacteria, both at different levels. And you can see the results. 0 of the 20 that had bacteria ever recorded a positive result. So one of the interesting things, I think, and I think Dr. Smith will talk about the media here in a little bit, but one thing that we notice is if you do incubate samples, dirty samples, and overnight, and you look at those samples the next day, you see changes in the viscosity of in those transit tubes or in your in pouches. And so something's going on there to change the media, and so some degradation or something's happening there. Some more challenges: having the proper collection media, having enough at your clinic to meet the client's needs. Clients don't tend to think about their sampling, their trick testing until the day before. It seems to happen all the time. So having enough around can be a challenge, as these things don't have a long dating typically. So another challenge to the system. Sample preparation. Again, it goes back to the diagnostic labs. And the veterinarian being in touch with the diagnostic labs. I think there's been a lot of changes over the last probably 3 years in what labs are doing. The lab that we work with just informed us they will not take in pouches for PCR anymore. So we were using both the in-transit tubes and the in pouches. So we've switched that to help meet those needs. Labs are going to be different around the country, and so the shipping was something that we found was interesting when we pulled those labs. There's quite a few different answers on how those should be shipped and how soon they wanted them. Some wanted them within 24 hours. Some were up to 72 hours. Some did want them to be shipped. The answers were from on ice, but didn't really give any clarification. Some were using ice packs, but did not want them touching. Others wanted them at room temperature. Others depended on the weather, whether you use cold packs or warm to kind of keep it in the ideal range. So again, I think just working with the labs is important. From my standpoint, I would like to see some standardization amongst the labs in what they're looking for. I think it would help us out as practicing veterinarians. We also face some transportation issues. Of course, a lot of our animals are going to be in rural areas, and timely, reliable transportation to get our samples to the labs is definitely an issue. We try to send everything through FedEx and UPS. We've had tremendous issues with our mail system and getting them to the diagnostic lab. So some answers, some questions I think need to be answered, and I know there's some research going on right now, is how long can those things, how long can we be in transit, and at what temperature, and how much are we affecting those? I think those need to be answered, would help us out as practicing vets in interpreting those sort of results. We know that sensitivity and specificity go down for both culture and PCR the longer those things set out there. So I guess to kind of wrap up, how do we get better from a practicing veterinarian standpoint in what we're doing? And I think we do need some type of standardization in our processes. I think right now there's ongoing research, but we do know what we know. I feel adopting the best diagnostic testing available. Quantitative PCR, in my mind, is probably the best right now. Using chemical lysis and internal application controls, I think is important. I think we need to be promoting the best standard operating procedures for sampling, sample prep, and shipping. I think we can have some collaboration. There's a lot of people doing some good research, but I think as a practicing veterinarian, if those things can be brought to us in some sort of standardized package, I think we get better samples, better handling of those samples, and therefore better results at our labs. So I also think we need increased veterinarian and producer awareness. Like Jeff said earlier, in working with the Cattlemen's Organization, there's been times when you've talked to some very good producers that didn't even have a clue what trichomoniasis was. So, having these kinds of meetings, talking about it more, certainly helps that, gets it in front of people, I think. So, and then finally, I think standardizing regulations amongst states, certainly regionally, would help in the process and help us as veterinarians. I'll give you an example that happened to us recently. We tested a group of bulls. There's about 200 bulls going to Wyoming, and at the time the bulls were tested, the requirements said they did not need to be trick tested. Well, that changed from the time they were fertility tested to the time they were shipped. So they all got to go back through and now get a trick test. So you can imagine how happy that producer was to have to run those bulls back through again. And frankly, it's not a lot of fun for us to have to run those animals through again and do the trick testing. So I think getting these type of meetings together is important. Certainly will help us out as practitioners to get some standardization amongst not only regulations, hopefully in our diagnostic testing, and finally in some standard operating procedures for sampling, prep, and shipping. So